Due to the graphic nature of its content, listener discretion is advised.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for our...
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, Mike and Juslin continue the conversation in part 2 of their interview with Darrel Fusaro, world-renowned producer, podcast personality and radio show host, and inspirational speaker.
Well, I got out of the service and I had my heart set on Seattle. At that time, it was just before Nirvana. Seattle was just starting to bubble as like this cool place to go to, you know. This was the late 80s, and I was going to go to art school there. I mean, that was the place to be, from Hawaii to there. Well, I ended up taking a trip to New Jersey to visit my younger brother before I moved to Seattle. I applied to an art school in Seattle with financial aid. You know, I'm out of the service. I have no career. I'm not a college educated. I had no college degree either. So, you know, I knew it was going to be part-time work and financial aid. You know, service jobs, I'm cool with that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I get a notice, no financial aid, sorry. And they go, but you can take out loans. I'm going, I don't want to take out loans. Now, here's where the decision and ego, you know, and again, surrendering. Am I going to surrender? And usually when I'm fighting, it's my ego. You know, when I'm struggling, it's my ego. And surrender means going the more humble, but it turns out to be, in the long run, the more successful route. And here's a perfect example. Someone I trusted, who I became friends with in Hawaii, became like a mentor to me. Kind of took the place of my father. His name's Mike Dugan. He's been actually more instrumental in my life than my own father, and we're still good friends to this day. He said, well, why don't you apply where you are? And here's the ego. I don't want to live back in New Jersey. I've been living in Hawaii. You know what I mean? It was like this.
Yeah.
Well, long story short, I had to make an amends to a friend of mine's father for something I had done before, while I was younger, before I had joined the Coast Guard, that I felt I needed to make to this guy, because they were always kind to me, and I had stolen something from him, and I had, so I wanted to pay him back for it. Long story short, this guy was now an advertiser, and he was an artist, and he had gone to this school, the Newark School of Fine and Industrial Art. So I thought, you know, I really respect this guy. I'm going to apply to that school. It was local. I go to the school with nothing but a portfolio. Now, here's where always add value. And if you're in a situation you don't particularly like, you know, don't look at what's wrong in the situation. Just look at what you have that's good, that you can contribute to the situation, you know. And this is where I had underneath my arm, my portfolio was made up of all that artwork that I told you that I had done as side work for the Coast Guard. That's all I had. I go in, meet the dean, and I get, not only do I get accepted, I get accepted with a scholarship. I only had to come up with $453.
Oh, wow.
A semester. Isn't that amazing? Like, I mean, it's incredible. And that story leads to, you know, I mean, that's just one of going with the flow, you know, and that turned out to be the best, of course, school for me, or I wouldn't be where I am today. I mean, within two years of that school, I was already exhibiting in New York. A year or two after I graduated, while I was at that school, I had an exhibit in Carmel, California. 3 years after I graduated, I was in American Artist magazine, you know, and then I would been in 2 more times since then, you know, for my art. And here it is, I was like going to snub my nose at New Jersey. But, you know, it's just you know, going with the flow, not letting my ego take control and think it knows best, you know, remain humble. Another Marine who has now passed, a sergeant, Marine sergeant, his name was Kevin Fields. While I was still in the Coast Guard, he was instructing me on scuba shore scuba dives where you go in from the shore instead of off a boat, which can be a struggle, getting back in and stuff because you're fighting current, which you shouldn't be. So we went out at Barbers Point. If anyone's familiar with Hawaii, Barbers Point can be very rough and churned up like New Jersey, very low visibility. And of course, there's always the fear of sharks over there in that area. So we did a shore dive. We're out. And one of the things he briefed me on before we went out was, listen, if you're struggling because you can't feel the current when you're down low underwater, it's hard to be aware of the current, so you can't tell if you're fighting the current or not. And he said this: if you guys get stuck, you run low on air, and you need to get back to the shore, the quickest way to get back to the shore is watch the fish. This was another like Miyagi thing. Watch the fish. Watch the fish? Like tropical fish? Yeah. He goes, just watch what they do and do what they do. So I'm like, all right, whatever. Well, figures my tank runs out, is running out. I'm like, holy cow, I got to get back, right? No one's around. Like, we were all our separate ways. So I start going back. I'm underwater. I'm probably about 10, 15 feet below the surface on my way in. And I noticed the fish. He said, watch the fish. Just do what the fish do. And the fish, these little fish, and this is another thing. When you're in the fish's environment, you're not smarter than the fish. You got to be humble enough to know the fish, you know what I mean? Don't be smarter than a fish when you're in the ocean, all right? So, but this is another example of that. That's surrender. Surrender, you don't know it all. Surrender the ego. That's what I meant. Surrender the ego. So I'm watching the fish. I watch the fish. They start paddling forward. I paddle forward. I move, feels like 15 yards. And then the thought is, well, keep paddling. No, the fish stop. I watch the fish, and then now I'm aware. So I could feel myself being pulled back. I would have never felt that because it's a very subtle feeling, and I wouldn't have felt it if I kept paddling the whole time. I paddled when the fish paddle, move forward. When the fish stop, I stop. Let myself go back a little, paddle. And it was another example of, and of course, I don't know why I get these best lessons from Marines. I mean, it's not like your heads aren't big enough already. They have a tough time squeezing in those helmets. But, I mean, I got to hand it to you. I mean, it's been Marines that have given me the most, I was going to say, the most, they seem like these simple little things, or they're life-changing and life-saving.
Well, I think it's funny that you specifically wind up finding yourself going back over to Marines because we're the other bastard stepchildren of the Navy. But
That's true. I forgot about that portion of the show.
Is it true that you guys say "oorah" as well?
Huh?
Do you guys say "oorah" as well?
No, we say hold your breath, you're going down. No, we don't really say much of anything other than I just hope the ship doesn't go down.
Right.
I mean, but
Did you hear now that you've got to be over 6 foot tall to be in the Coast Guard? Because that way, if the ship capsizes, you can be able to walk ashore.
Oh, yeah, we've heard that. Yeah, shallow water sailors, harbor ducks.
Right.
Yeah, always prepared. That's our motto, semper paratus.
There you go.
I'll tell you what, it takes a tough man to admit he was in the Coast Guard. That's all I'm going to say. Wait, there's a picture of me on Facebook. I also put it on my website, and it's Arlie Army, our most famous Marine Corps drill sergeant from Apocalypse Now. He was the actor in that.
Full Metal Jacket. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Full Metal Jacket. I always mix those two up. Thank you for correcting me.
No, it's all good.
He's a real life Marine.
Yeah.
Well, I met him as an adult. I met him in person just maybe, I don't know, 4 years or so ago. And we're chatting, and he was getting ready to talk to a group of people, actually veterans. And I was there because I was working for Time Warner at the time. You know, I became a producer with the local edition headline news segments out here in Hawaii. So I was there for that reason. Well, I'm talking to him. We were getting along just fine. And then I mentioned that, you know, what service you? And I said, I was in the Coast Guard. And I figured, you know, is this guy going to razz me? You know, because he's exactly in real life like he is in that movie. You know, but the guy has got a heart of gold. I mean, he's the real deal. He is like sincere, kind, upstanding, loyal, but he doesn't pull any punches. Which I'm grateful for, because that's what saved my ass with Mike Urton. You know what I mean? He gave it to me straight. You know, the truth will set you free, but, you know, first it'll piss you off. So, you know, he's got to be, if you can get past that part, you're home free. So I told him, I'm in the Coast Guard. He, unprompted, just like in front of the guys, goes, you know, I got to say something before I go on. These guys here, he goes, these Coast Guard guys, he goes, don't mess with these guys. These guys, and he went on like, these guys are the bravest, you know, in his language, motherfuckers. He goes, I've seen these guys in action. He goes, these guys were amazing when I was, you know, he went through this whole litany. I mean, he made me more proud than I had ever felt, because it was coming from him. It wasn't like me having to say, well, we do save lives. I mean, we work around the clock. We don't just do exercises waiting to go to war. I mean, we're actually saving numbskulls who go fishing when they should. Like, I didn't have to do that. He was like, boom, boom, boom. And he, like, knew more about Coast Guard history than I could ever remember. It was incredible. It was like, wow. So there's like a picture of him with his arm around me, like I was his best friend. And this was all only because I was in the Coast Guard, and there you have it. Another Marine, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think this just goes to show, you know, we get what we put out in life. And, you know, when I started talking on this interview and said, you know, when I went through the list and I said Marine Corps, no way, you know, I meant that out of respect. There was like, because I knew, like, what I believed about myself. Like, this is an underhanded compliment, really, because it's really saying volumes. It's saying, I'll never make it there. I'll never make it with that caliber of man, because I thought so low of myself, you know? And I think because I've always had that opinion, that high opinion of the United States Marines, that I end up, you attract what you put out. You know, I sincerely believe that. You know, the things you think, the things you believe, the things you really hold dear in your mind and your thoughts come out in your behavior. But like I said, you know, the mind isn't just trapped within our skull. You know, it goes out. You know, that's why prayer works and meditation works. And so these thoughts start to reflect back. And, you know, you're making me realize, you know, my high opinion of always holding the Marines in such high regard. And I think it comes partly from growing up, you know, although my father was not in the service. I mean, there was always that was a different time. You know, my father's era, there was a high regard for the military. It was after Vietnam, it kind of tapered off, unfortunately. And then we had a resurgence out of a terrible, you know, the catastrophe of 9/11. There was another, you know, patriotic, you know, uplifting respect, you know, momentum for pride for the military. And
it was
and
a
then
massive demonstration of patriotic, you know, American. Yeah. We have the medal. You know, it's funny though, because when I saw that, it was like we had it and people were paying attention to it and we couldn't believe it. And then at one point in time, it was just people stopped paying attention. And I think that's because when we went into the fight, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's the worst thing in the entire world, because people stopped paying attention because we didn't have bonds drives, and we didn't have Rosie the Riveter,
Right.
and, and 30% of the U.S. population going to war. I mean, there were a slim minority of us who were going to go over and fight.
Yes.
And I hate the statistic that when I was in Ramadi, Iraq with Juslin over here, 2005, 2006, more people died in Saginaw, Michigan, 20 minutes down the road from where I grew up, than were killed in all of Iraq during that time frame. So for 7 months in Iraq, more people were dying on the streets of Michigan. So neither one of them are being reported, keep in mind. But the reason why I bring it up is because it just goes to show you that there are some of us who are committed to that specific endeavor, and there was that patriotic knee-jerk reaction. But it almost snapped back like a rubber band afterwards. There are some of us who are still out there waving the flags and what have you, but it's difficult seeing it now as far as patriotism is almost gauche. Is that the right word?
Well, you know what? It's hard not to talk about this stuff because, even in here, like what I'm aware of out here, I live in California. It's almost like patriotism or patriotic is a bad word. Do you know what I mean? It's this weird. It's almost like if you show patriotism, I don't know why it's an absurd reaction. Like it's almost like it's un-American to be patriotic. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's worrisome.
I think it's a reflection of how the American people see themselves, though. If you're looking at it from, like, trying to get an understanding of it, it's my opinion that the American people just don't like themselves and each other, and we've become so divisive, so unnecessarily brutal with each other, with social media and with the regular media, that we're not cultivating this environment of working together like we were talking about earlier. We're not cultivating any sort of bonding. I mean, we judge one another solely by monetary value, and we pursue nothing else. So, I mean, it really goes to show, like, if I'm going to be proud of something, I want to be actually proud of it. And so, if Americans are taking stock into where are we at, then they might not naturally be at that place of taking pride in it. Now, the caveat to this is, okay, for all those people, like, let's do something then. In the words of Shia LaBeouf, do it! We do have the opportunity to do it right. We do have the opportunity to do it without fear. I mean, it's all possible. And I'm not saying that in some ethereal, wispy way. It's more practical. I mean, you see, like, somebody talking about a goal they have, and it's like, well, help out. And if you can't help out, at the very least, hey, someone you're 6 degrees is separated from everybody, and we have social media. Like, you can find somebody that will either be able to fill that need or knows someone. So, but that's what I hope to do with all of our endeavors, and I know Mike is championing this as well. Is I want to be able to show people, hey, like, this is how to do it right. And in our business dealings, be that example. So it's not just kind of a pulpit. I just plan on showing people, and not saying that I want to bolster my own, self in it. Much rather, I want to show people, look how effective it is. Just as a process of bringing value, never trying to take more than you deserve, ensuring that everyone that you're working with is taken care of. Like, Like, that's
Yes.
community. That's, in my opinion, how we ought to be.
Well, I think you're hitting on something that goes hand in hand with, the benefits of being in the military. Because I think a lot of this, the way you're thinking, the way I think, the way Michael thinks and acts, because we were dependent upon each other. We learned teamwork. We learned it wasn't me. We learned we had to work together. We had to get along. We had to, set aside stupid, petty resentments or stupid personality, especially I was on a Coast Guard cutter. You're on a ship in the middle of the ocean, and it's a small ship. I mean, it's not like a giant aircraft carrier. I mean, this was a small ship, but we're out there for 76 days, and so you're working with your boss, and some people are your friends, some people are just coworkers. Well, now you're living with them. Like, you had to learn to get along, and it was such a lot of people don't get this opportunity because it was something that we're forced into because of the service and our job demands that we get along in order to survive. But then what it does, it has a very positive side effect because we get addicted in a healthy way to the exact sort of mentality that you just shared. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. We all now value that so much inside that we don't let silly little personal grievances destroy us or write people off necessarily. I mean, it takes a lot for us to write someone off. Like, we get over things, we quickly forgive. It's the good of the group always outweighs my personal selfish desires. That's what the military has helped transform in me, and a lot of people who haven't had that experience, I think that's where it's a disconnected, selfish feeling, but your sense of community, and the good news is this can grow, it grows from our example.
Yes. And I hope that it grows out, to where, and I'm not saying that the military methodology, but this concept, I'm hoping it starts spreading into the civilian world as well, just by seeing it, and also by working with us, seeing like a practical application of integrity and right living. Because we could use that on all fronts, and I'm again not trying to stand on a soapbox, but it's just we need to get back into focus on our values as a nation. We need to get back into focus on accepting each other and working together and just kind of being a community again.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I agree. Because, and that's another thing, until you get outside of this country, and really see other parts of the world, I mean, I am so grateful to be born in America, after traveling and being other places. I mean, this is such a wonderful place. I mean, everyone complains, but I don't see anybody leaving. You know what I mean? I mean, people will complain, but they're not moving, and there's still millions upon millions of people who let them say what they want about America, but they're still trying to come here,
Right, exactly. They're still looking for that American dream.
Yes.
That was one of the things, too. When I transitioned out of the service, I had a naive idea of the American dream. And it was ironic because when I first stepped into an English classroom, I think it was legitimately the very first assignment that I was given was like a 4-page read through on what is the American dream, and then we had to write like a 6-page essay on what our thoughts were and so on, blah blah blah. It really opened my eyes to what originally was the concept of 2.5 children, suburban family, white picket fence, guy, gray suit, black tie, heads into work every day. It completely turned that on its ear, because you started understanding American culture and the different subcultures that operate and function within America as a whole. And I thought for whatever reason that it was like, all right, snag a cubicle and and a button-down shirt and hop right into the rat race in order to make it happen. Now, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but that was the thought that I had as far as an American dream, was you kind of got to work somewhere, and then you work your way up, and then you're trained. Yeah. Oh, and then when you're trained, then maybe you have the potential to be able to branch off from that. In entrepreneurship, you have the training and the mentorship, and then you go and do it. And it's trial by fire. It really has to be. What's interesting is it's the only field that's like that, at least as far as I know. I guess you could say journalism could be like that. I don't mean to offend anybody who's an aspiring broadcast journalist or something, but you understand what I'm trying to say. You legitimately, there's not a school for it.
No.
So,
and I think this is one of the only countries where we have any one of us, like success to me. I used to have that same idea of what success, American dream meant. And thank God I was wrong, because it's such a dismal dream. But now I got it. It's almost like our country allows any one of us the freedom to pursue a worthy goal of his own or her own desire, and you have the ability to do that, and you have the freedom to move throughout the country freely, to be closer to where you believe that'll flourish better than somewhere else. Absolutely. You have the freedom to contact anybody for help. It's really a wonderful, and once you start picking up momentum toward your, whatever your worthy goal is, that you feel will benefit others and benefit society or be a helpful new product or service, it becomes attractive. It becomes like a snowball. It starts picking up more and more, assistance, and more like all the help starts to come, and it attracts more help, and it builds up steam and momentum. It's an incredible country we live in. For that reason, I actually have a rental property that we own, and our tenants moved here. He was a big actor in South Africa. His name's Cliff Simon. He was the bad guy on Stargate on television. His name was Ball on that for like the whole, how many years that show was on. And right. He's the nicest guy in the world, but he's usually he's been on the bad guy on about every major television show you've ever seen, including The Americans. He was just on as a bad guy. But they came here. They were able to come to this country, not knowing anyone. He was a big fish in a small pond, but he knew if he wanted to really succeed, and this is what he told me, I knew I had to be in America. That's where this is possible, this freedom to pursue your worthy goal, to pursue your dream. He came here. It's amazing. And now, it's 14 years later, they're still our tenants, the best tenants in the world, and we've become close friends. And one thing led to another. They're now United States citizens. They became citizens. They love this country. His sister-in-law moved here. She's now a citizen. She just got married to someone. They have 2 beautiful kids here now. It just goes to show you this dream is here, and it's available. And it's funny. It's almost like seeing people come from other countries, like seeing Cliff and seeing our society and how it's perceived with this wonderful belief from their eyes, like reinvigorates me. You know, it like stokes the fire of appreciation I have for our country.
I couldn't agree with you more. 100%. Yeah, it's one of those where make it up as you go along. Nobody really knows what the fuck they're doing anyhow. That's probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. I was a kid. I was 8 years old. An adult looked down at me. And I was like, hey, I don't know how to do this or whatever. And, Jesus, I want to say it was my uncle. It might have been my uncle. But he looked down at me and he goes, do whatever the fuck you're going to do. Nobody understands what the hell's going on anyhow.
Isn't that amazing? Because there is a lot of wisdom in that and a lot of relief.
Well, right. And it was also one of those Matrix moments where it's like, there is no spoon. You know, and it's like, wait a minute, grown-ups don't know what they're doing? Oh, my God! You know, his face melting at the time, mind blown.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, my God, you don't know what you're doing? And I remember I questioned my mother about this when I was like 10, damn near got the spoon, you know what I mean? And she was driving, and I'm sure she had heard it enough from my dad in regard to directions and not being able to find her way around and stuff. And I meant this as an inquisitive youth. She thought I was being a smartass, but she had no idea where she was going. And I, lean up from the back seat, and I'm like, do you honestly know what's going on? And she was pissed. She's like, Michael, sit back there. And I'm like, no, do you honestly know what's going on in life? I'm lost. And she's like, what? I'm not going to have this conversation with you. You know what I mean? It was one of those moments, and it's happened throughout my life.
Oh,
there are different times, honestly, I've heard, you get caught in situations even as an adult where you're looking around and you're like, no, like, shit, like I need an adultier adult.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And you're looking around and you're going, oh, God. All right, maybe a grown-up will help me. And, of course, what's so funny about it is none of us really know what the hell. Honestly, None of us have any idea. I don't know why there's people that are out there that honestly believe that they think that they can predict anything that's going on. You have no idea what's going to happen, man. Just fuck it and enjoy the ride. I'm just so on board with that notion. You know what I mean? I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in life. I have no idea if I'm going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. Honestly, really don't care. I
love that. Well, because thinking that way actually expands my mind. Where thinking the other way, like I got to control things or figure things out, seems to contract my mind.
Right. Oh, of course. It's got to stay on the rails.
I want to talk longer, but my 2 dogs are like begging me
it's okay.
to walk them.
It's okay. It's dinner time anyhow.
If these guys, if I don't walk Mr. French, if anyone's listening, I have a Chiweenie, which is a Dachshund Chihuahua mix, and this guy, I mean, he's got a bladder the size of a penny. No pun intended, Michael. Okay, but he's got a tiny. So it's like, oh no, what did he pee on? And he's like, well, I didn't pee on anything. Sure enough, oh God, this little dog. My wife just keeps bringing him home, and I just can't say no.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. We'll have to do this again soon, if at all possible. So,
yes, thank you for coming on.
Oh, are you kidding me? This was a pleasure. I hope we said something worth anything to anyone. But the main thing is, I had a great time. I feel great, about what you guys are doing. I feel really good about myself after talking to you too. I mean, this really was awesome. I mean, thank you.
Wonderful.
All right, man. I'll see you too soon, hopefully. And in the meantime, just keep at it, man. This is great.
Right on.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Darrell.
You got it. And I love your attitudes, man. I feel it's so nice not to be alone with this, you know what I mean? It's just wonderful that there's more people that think I'm not the only one who believes this way or thinks this way. It's just awesome, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you for reciprocating the positivity, brother. Absolutely, always a fantastic time chatting with you. Listener audience, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review the show. Your comments make the show. Who do you want us to interview next? How many more times can we have Darrell on? Because he's awesome. So go ahead and send us in those comments. We'd love to know how we can make the show better. So, Darrell, thank you so much. Audience, subscribe, rate, review, and cue the music. I see that you are gangster. I happen to be pretty gangster myself.
So we've got to come up with a new, saying then. Because
For what?
We can't say all good in the hood because...
Yeah, I don't live in the hood.
What's a gangster version of the forest?
So, wait a minute. What's gangster for living in the forest? I don't know if that can happen.
But it's very much an old school concept.
Yeah. All good in the wood.